All right, listen to the Hollywood Show here with your boy Hollywood on KRZA 88.7 here in beautiful Alamosa, Colorado, Taos, New Mexico, 98.7 in Saguache, Colorado, and streaming online at krza.org. Connected cultures along the upper Rio Grande. My buddy Tyler is, well, you know what? I kind of messed that up at the beginning of the show. I was hoping to get this dialed in, but whenever something kind of goes off tilter, I start freaking out and just start pressing buttons all over the board, and it just doesn't work for me, man. So my buddy Tyler Loya has just entered the building. And Tyler, say hi to everybody.
Hi, how are y'all doing today?
All right, Tyler's in to talk about his record that he's got out, and brand new record that he just pulled out. And I'm excited to be the first to, play it here, debut it on my show and stuff like that. And he's we're trying to get this record out, and he's trying to get some live shows going here, and he's going to be pulling off a small little small tour to support the album if he will. He's going to try to take himself, I believe, out to Oklahoma and stuff like that. Is that right, T?
Yeah, Oklahoma down to Austin, and then back up through maybe Albuquerque coming back. So.
Well, right on, man. I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah, very, very excited. It's a different thing for me, as a bassist. You don't go on tour by yourself. That's not usually what we get to do, so it's exciting. Well,
you've been on the road before with the Agitators when you were 15 years old, and I think that's really cool, man. Playing all over the Dallas area and Texas area and stuff like that. When you guys went on the road, did you guys go to other states and stuff like that, or?
That Southwest circuit, so Arkansas, Louisiana, down to New Orleans.
What did you guys tour out of, like a minivan or
yeah, it was
a pickup truck or what?
Always different, sometimes we'd have to rent a van, other times it's a buddy's car.
Yeah. The road life ain't fun, man. Everybody thinks it's all like glitz and glamour when you go on the road, but you're not washing your clothes for weeks on end, and the sweat from your jeans to your t-shirt, you're still wearing the same thing, and everybody's kind of going, what's that smell? I know G knows what it's like when he goes on the road. So what I got here for you, I know you're a skilled and schooled musician that you went through lessons and stuff like that. How long have you studied music, growing up in music and stuff like that? How long have you studied it, man?
I got real serious when I was 14, but I always played before then. I played the violin in first grade and then went to trumpet. And once I got a bass at 14, I started taking it more seriously, and studied with Chuck Rainey.
Chuck Rainey, and if you would, I let everybody know who Chuck Rainey is. Charles Walter Rainey III was an American bass guitarist who performed and recorded with many well-known acts, including Aretha Franklin, Steely Dan, Quincy Jones, and was on thousands of albums, man. He's one of the most recorded bass players out there. And so, Tyler, when you're 14, you went. How did you find that guy, or how do you find you?
My mom found him. She was a big Steely Dan fan and Aretha fan, and all the music that he recorded. But he was out in Arlington, Texas, studio music was changing at the time, to where it kind of shut down. There's not as many studio musicians, are just not in demand.
Well, before you did the studying and stuff, were you like playing like every typical kid? Were you just playing rock songs, your favorite rock songs on the bass and stuff like that? I mean, before you entered that, okay, I need to get some lessons type thing.
Yeah, I think I had maybe 6 months in a punk band, and then the teacher that I had before it didn't really tickle my fancy. We weren't doing. I think we were just playing music I didn't really enjoy, and then I got signed up with Chuck, and I didn't really understand the significance of it. At 14, and the music I was listening to didn't correspond. But when you sit down with him, it really opens your mind to different kinds of music, all the different bass techniques, and how much you can do with an electric bass. Gets you listening, gets your brain turning.
Were you kind of nervous, like when Rainey goes, "Hey man, this is how this is going to go. Sit down and listen to what I got to tell you"? Did you get kind of nervous, or just being a youngster, you're like, "Hey man, just show me what you got"? Or did you,
No,
how did that work out? I mean,
he came. He was pretty self-explanatory. He goes, anyone can teach you how to read music. You can get a Mel Bay's book. do you want to learn technique or do you want to learn to play? Do you know how to play or to read? You know, and I really went into the whole technique side. Anything that he could teach me, you go home and study for the week, skip school sometimes just to practice. You know,
Was everything like on the electric bass, or were you doing upright at the time? I mean, how did that process happen?
All electric back then, and I got it upright when I was about 19, 20, and that's a monster. You know, it takes a lot of commitment and time to work with that instrument, and it's not. It has its similarities with the electric, but it's a whole new skill set, you know, when you come to that.
Sure. But you know what I can't. Did you realize when you were getting taught or getting these lessons from Chuck, you were kind of going, man, that's that guy from Steely Dan. Hey, wait a minute, that's that guy from Aretha. You know, you didn't get starstruck when you're listening to this guy and he was teaching you, or he was just some guy?
He was such, and he is just such a soft-spoken person, very, very calming to be around. And when you sit down and just trade bass grooves, you know, when you'd come in for the week and he just wants to know kind of what you've been working on, and he'll vamp off of what you're doing, you know. He doesn't put himself in that place. Just always very open and calming to be around as a person.
Were you committed though? Were you committed as a bass player at that time? Like, did Chuck ever go, I know you didn't practice. I know you didn't work on that material I just sent you home with. Because I know when I used to teach guitar, I'd teach these kids, like, you know, and I'm not much of a guitar player, but I was able to teach at the time. And I'd go, I know you didn't practice, man. We're still working on the same thing that we worked on last week, which was okay with me because I was getting paid either way, you know. But did Chuck ever do that? Go, hey, wait a minute, Tyler, you're not working on the material that I did. Did that ever happen, being at, you know, such a young age? Because I know 14 years old, man, you're unstoppable. You're like, man, it's me against the world type thing, you know, that attitude, you know.
No, the bass just really focused me more through my younger age. We were pretty dedicated. I never didn't practice, you know. That's all I would do. I would get home out of school. We would go to friends' houses, and they'd be nice enough to let us have a place to practice, you know, and a place to rehearse. And we recorded a demo, and Chuck was always very supportive. It didn't really matter if it was punk music or anything that I was doing. He would always want to hear what it was. And that, I think, part of him being a studio musician, we never really got into reading and writing. It was always recorded on tapes, the practices. And you take them home and you listen, so you're always doing this ear training. There was no reading. It was all about technique and ear training, and going from one style to another, you know. So funk grooves on the bass, slapping, and then punk music, where completely different styles, completely different feels. But it opens up those techniques into, you know, in whatever style you are, you know. It's just extra tools in the toolbox.
Well, you know, I almost feel like I can't dig deep enough, because what I'm trying to get out of you right now is, like, when you got into, like, okay, I played trumpet in school, and then I switched to bass. So something had to grasp you by saying, man, I just seen Geddy Lee play with Rush, or I heard that record that did this, and I want to do that just like anybody else does, you know. And that's what I want to know. I want to know, because me as a guitar player, or when I started playing guitar, it's like, man, I want to play like Eddie Van Halen. I want to play this lick, or I want to, you know, play some Black Sabbath, you know, like Paranoid, because I like the riff, you know. So what was the riff? What was it got you by the throat riff that said, I want to do this?
You know, there were so many punk bands back in the day, the Descendants, the Angry Samoans, 7 Seconds, just all those punk bands, those obscure bands. They all, you know, a lot of them had really interesting bass players. You know, it's, whenever there's just a little bass fill, you learn it.
Yeah.
And you forget it, and then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it became about technique a lot in my young age. Where I was playing with people where I couldn't use the techniques. I was getting into things that I couldn't use in punk rock music anymore. But in jazz and in funk music,
Well, how did you transition from punk to funk to jazz and soul to the folk world, sounding? I'm worried that you're living today with it. How did you make that transition?
I think it's just that technique. It kind of played itself out in the electric. I'd heard everything on the electric bass that I was happy doing. I got kind of bored with it. Things got kind of stale. And then I got a acoustic bass about 13 years ago, and it kind of sat in the corner for about a year. It was very unappealing sound, real thumpy, and
Yeah.
a lot of people own them. And I started working with it. I believe I was listening to Buka White, an old blues player, very, very rhythmic, and I heard these similarities between what this bass can do and what Buka White did decades before, and it got things moving in that direction to where I started hearing fuller tones and working with chords on the bass, where you're not really playing anything single string anymore. It's all full chords, and having to kind of create new techniques to work with the instrument, and that was exciting for me. It was it's different techniques than the electric in the upright. But gave me the capacity to understand that the bass could be used as a solo instrument.
Yeah, because I've had a lot of people ask me, that's a guitar on there, when they hear your live music or hear the records that when we play here on the show, and they go, is that a guitar that's being accompanied by him? Because we can hear some bass lines in there, but it sounds more guitar, So if you could explain that on how that worked. I don't even know how you got that process to happen. Is that something you invented? Because I don't think I've ever heard anybody do that.
It's you use the electric bass in some of the same ways, and there's a lot of you're using drones. I use capos. I also tune up usually at least 2 to 3 steps on the acoustic. So just to take these instruments and tune them that high, you got to do a lot of bridge work on it. You got to the new bass that I got about a week ago. It's about 2 weeks ago now. It's still being set up.
Yeah,
it's still in its bending stage.
Sure.
And that's part of it. The luthiership that goes along with the instrument is a lot of fun. And it's a sound that I can only get out of the 4-string acoustic bass. I can't get these sounds out of other instruments. So it's kind of new for me, but it's an interesting pursuit. It really is, the techniques.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's pretty cool. So what are your challenges? I mean, is there certain challenges you have when you're doing it? It has to be a challenge because you're doing it all solo now. You're not accompanying a whole band anymore, especially like when you're about ready to go on the road and play live shows. I mean, when the mistake is made, it's you that's making the mistake, right? We can't look at one another like we used to do in bands and say, oh, it was him. It was the bass player. Oh, no, it was the drummer. You know what I mean? So I bet a lot of that weight falls on your shoulder, especially when you're going out doing your thing, because now you're the show. You are the show. And that would wreck my nerves. I could play with just about anybody and be comfortable. But when it comes to the point where I'm the guy that has to either speak or sing, do a solo thing, then my nerves start getting the best of me. How is it that you make yourself comfortable with that?
I'm still working with it, Chris. I am. I'm not sure if the sound, when you hear things, you're not quite sure if other people hear them the same way. And it's a pretty full sound, like you said. Most people think it's just a guitar, normal kind of folk or world folk. And if it has that capacity, then I think it can be used by itself, and it puts pressure on you, but that's where the practice comes in. The more you rehearse, the more you practice. This instrument, coming up with a lot of these techniques, I just on the album, I was on a couple of the tracks. You listen to these tracks back, and you're just shaking your head like. When you actually listen to it back, you're like, I haven't heard anything quite like that on a bass before.
I haven't either.
And when you keep coming back to that, gives you, it helps with the confidence, that it's going in the right direction. I'm getting to hear things and share things that maybe haven't been explored before. You know, and that's worth it. You know, that's what I'm keeping in my mind's eye.
And segueing from that into your influences that you're going to have, give me your top influences that brought you into that, your style, so to speak. Because I know you and I had played some music together, and your feel is real good. I like the way the feel is. Our chemistry kind of works together, or I think it does. But your time signatures is what drives me nuts, and I think it comes from your influences, And if you can explain a little bit more of that, like like the African type rhythms and stuff like that, explain that to the audience that you explained to me on how that worked.
Yeah, some of my influences are John McLaughlin, a lot of his acoustic stuff that he did. Dabashish Bhattacharya, who's another Hindustani musician, and those musics deal with very long time signatures, lots of notes, and I've tried to simplify a lot of this and bring it into the West in a softer way. Is kind of the goal that I love these Eastern sounds. I love Northern sounds and Celtic sounds and African sounds. Ali Farka Touré, another great guitar player. But I've been kind of following guitar players for a long time, and trying to figure out how they do all these arpeggios and double arpeggios, and try to incorporate it with the lower tones of the bass. On the electric, it without the resonance of the wood, it just never will have the same sound. Acoustic instruments just have these properties that are almost magical to my ears. Of course, yeah. And round and what can be harmonics and feedback. With this instrument, they come out of nowhere. They're kind of ghostly sometimes. In some of the recordings, you hear them back, and you're like, is there a woman singing in the background? And it's just a harmonic that you just tapped. That's more off of the. It's more of the wood resonating, and then the string at certain times. So and every time you hear that, you try to control it, use it as a technique. To kind of compare to some of those players like McLaughlin that are just fantastic. You never have the speed or the elegance that you can create on the guitar, but using the bass with some of these techniques, you create a lot of rhythm, clicks and clacks and pops, and they create a rhythm that I think puts drummers and percussionists in a weird space, because they're expected to follow these rhythms, and sometimes they're out of the East, sometimes they're brought to the West, but they're still hanging on, they're still in that background. But I'm trying to palette it softly enough to where it doesn't necessarily have an origin. It's trying to use traditional music and really escape the traditions of traditional music.
Well, my experience of playing with bass players, and I've always been locked in with bass players, and G's going to get you set up because we're going to do a song here in a few seconds. I've never played with a bass player that played chords. Usually it was just bass players that would play one note at a time, and that just goes with talent and experience and stuff like that. But I just want to let everybody out there know that Tyler Aloy is going to be, he's debuting a few of his songs today. And which I'm excited about. I'm really looking forward to getting this, a few songs out of it if I can, because I want to experience it for myself, watching him up live. And I never really understood like his technique and stuff until I actually seen it, which was really cool. But he's going to try to pull off. Did you want to try to get a sound check here for yourself so we can get everything like leveled out? Do you have like a instrumental that we could probably pull off? I think we got you dialed in. You ready to do this one? Give me the name of the song and why you wrote it. It had to be some kind of inspiration, man.
This is it's called Big Love Time,
Okay.
and the lyrics came to me. It's really the only thing that fit in the track, you know, and the positivity of the words. You know, I never really heard the words together, and that's kind of what I went with. But it's a fun song to play. It really
Okay,
is.
cool. Well, do it for me, brother, if you don't mind. Tyler Aloy here. Big Love Time.
Big love time. Big love. Big love time. Big love. To hold the old time. To hold back from the brave. To hold the old time. Safe here in the day. To hold the old time. To say it ain't fine. To hold the old time. To kick off the day. Hey. Big love time. Big love. Big love time. Big love. To hold the old time. To jump up and stay. To hold the old time. To hold hands and wave. To hold the old time. The moon in her eye. To hold the old time. To kick off the day. Big love time. Big love. Big love time. Big love.
Nice. Get down, Tyler. How long did it take you to write that one?
I worked on it, the riff, for maybe a year and a half, but it was much faster. It was lightning speed. Back
Really?
then, yeah. It was. Many of these songs start out as really, really fast tempos.
Okay.
Just incredibly fast.
Was it hard being when you first started playing bass and stuff like that? Were you a singer back then or no?
Not so much. I never really enjoyed it as much until the capacity for the acoustic bass kind of presented it. Where it's once it started sounding like a guitar, it just was the next step. It just made sense.
Oh yeah. Well, that's cool. Do you get nervous though when you have to sing in front of somebody?
It's a work in progress. I'm getting more comfortable with it, but I'm getting to where I enjoy working with my voice. Trying to use it in different capacities to where it's maybe a little different from time to time, where it's not always exactly the same structure on every song. So trying to push that as well as the technique.
Yeah. Well, you also got to remember, like when you start getting out to try to push a record and you're thinking about doing this little small tour that you're planning on doing, health comes into play, especially when you're on the road and stuff like that. You get sick.
Yeah.
You get a cold, and the show must go on, as they say, right?
For sure, yeah.
So you ever think about things like that?
I try not to.
I just brought it in your head.
When you worry, you get sick, I think. So it's
Sorry, Tyler. He's like, well, I didn't think about it until now, man. So, because I know myself, whenever I get like stressed out when I got to do a show or something like that, my voice starts to go, and it's like it's mental, is what it is. It's all, like when we're about ready to do the show, like my voice starts to weaken a little bit. But you're just going to take care of yourself when you're on the road, making sure, especially going to different climates, different elevations, different humidities, non-humidities type things like that. And of course, it's going to play a part on your instrument itself, especially when you tune it as high as you do. And just as well as I do, when you hit these clubs, having a sound guy there, and is that guy going to do me right? Or, come on, you played enough times where you're frustrated most of the time.
Yeah.
I can't hear myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be doing these shows with my own PA system that, 800 watts. So it's, and can go into the main off of that. And if you got to not use it and work with them, I just got to work with them, But the instrument's hard enough to control all the deep end. Once you plug it in, it becomes it can get really out of control and massive, and the feedback with acoustic instruments on a stage setting. But these shows I'll be working with Ron Romine, who's a great musician here in the Valley, a good friend of mine, and he'll be doing drums and vocals on a few of the songs live to kind of open up sounds to where it's not just acoustic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's where
So if I was a booking agent and I wanted to book you, what category am I putting you under?
I consider it folk music. It's more modern, but it's definitely got worldly tones. But it gets rhythmic.
Yeah.
In a way that usually you don't associate with folk music until you leave America. And then rhythm starts getting into folk music in infectious ways. So you're kind of combining those two. So I would call it, folk and world folk.
Yeah, right on. Can you do another one for me?
Yeah.
What do you plan on doing here, Tyler?
Let's do this Blues for Jesse, which is I counted an 8/4. I think I had another friend that counts it an 8/8.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
But it's a really.
You and your time signatures, it drives me nuts, But that's the difference between a pro player and someone that just gets there. You know what I mean? I mean, you're a well-seasoned musician. I mean that with a lot of respect.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
definitely. So, Blues for Jesse, is it something you were sitting out on the back porch looking at the dog? How did this work? You were looking at the sunset, and you thought of this number. How did this develop?
These minor chords, I just came across this really slow, staggering riff, which is more like African blues, Mali or places like that. And the sound's familiar to me with a lot of musicians, but the time signature just kept stretching out and stretching it out.
Yeah.
And it just worked that way. But but I dedicate it to my wife, Jessie, just because each time you play it, it's kind of an improvisation. You know, when you play blues musically, or jazz musically, when you're playing instrumentals, it changes each time. Each time you do it, you hear it. You know, and you have to have the capacity for change. You know, and so it made me think of my marriage and my relationship with my wife. You know, and how that can grow if you allow it to, and you're willing to change.
Man, you just made me look bad. I just want to let you know that. My girlfriend always says, "Why don't you ever write a song for me?" I go, "Because I can't write. I can't write. I don't have that gift." You know, only now. Can you agree with that, Tyler? When you write, there's certain people that have melodies, and some people that just don't. You know what I mean? You can only teach, you know, certain things, but what you can't teach is how to write. It has to be within the soul itself, right? Tyler, would you say that? Did I make any sense when I said that?
It does. I've found that just the more practice, you know, the more you practice and the more you work with it, the more fluid it becomes. You know, it becomes as fluid as the techniques do, which to me is the same as just tuning your instrument and working on it for long periods of time. You know, there's not really any rush with a lot of these things, at least with this project, because it's still coming along.
I think it sounds great, man. You're doing a fabulous job, and let's hear a little bit of blues for Jesse here on the Hollywood Show. All right, little blues for Jesse from Tyler Alloy. The record is called Colossi, right?
Colossi.
Colossi. I knew I was saying it wrong. I didn't even know if I was saying your last name right. Alloy, is it?
Most people say alloy, like the metal.
Well, what is it? You tell me what the true meaning.
But I hear, I've always heard alloy, but
Alloy? Okay, alloy.
It doesn't bother me.
I apologize.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, well, you're listening to the Hollywood Show here on KRZA 88.7 here in beautiful Alamosa, Colorado, Taos, New Mexico. 98.7 in Saguache, Colorado, and streaming online at KRZA.org. Connected cultures along the Upper Rio Grande. You're listening to Tyler Alloy. Alloy. Man, you know what? I got a brain freeze on that name. Colossi, right?
Yeah, Colossi, which would be just plural of Colossus.
Oh, okay. And how did you come up with that?
It really fit this. I was working with a song that's on the album called "Morning and Shine," and it was a really interesting song, and that lyric really stuck with me that I put in there, and it was a song based off of fear, and how we allow fear to drive us in very strange directions, and if we can have an absence of it, we're much happier, and that's what the song was about.
Okay.
Morning and Shine.
Oh, right on, man. You're pretty positive, man. I expected for a punk rocker. You sure are positive and uplifting now, man. That's not how it used to be, man. It's punk with the. Did you ever have a mohawk when you was a young kid?
Oh yeah, all different. I could get kicked out of school for having green hair or blue hair. And,
now look at you.
I couldn't play in the jazz bands. I didn't fit in, even in high school. So it was,
But what people don't understand is you were part of a band called the Agitators back in the 80s. And really, I find the band very talented. Even though you guys knew like 8 songs or something like that, or 8 or 9 songs, right?
Yeah,
on
we
the
had
record?
a full song. I think we had about, a full set. We play about an hour,
Okay.
Traveling around. But
Yeah.
never any more songs.
But you would shred, man. I would hear those riffs that you would play and stuff. I'd be like, man, that's awesome. And then I bet when Rainey seen you go into the punk side, he's like, hey, wait a minute, you can't be doing this, right?
No.
Did he ever say that?
Never. He was always so supportive of it. Working as a studio musician in his day, he didn't have the opportunity to choose what he wanted to play. You go in and you go into a session and you do the best you can do. In one of those Steely Dan's like Peg, those slap lines in those recordings, I don't believe they're ever really written in there. That's kind of Chuck's added thing.
Sure.
Than his style, and that's once you get to a point where he got to, it's like, sure, your style is part of who you're hiring, but especially when you start out, you just got to play the music.
Well, Chuck also played with one of my favorite drummers of all time. I would say, in my top 5 is Jeff Porcaro.
Right.
Who played with Steely Dan at one point and stuff like that, and I find that fascinating. That whole era of musicians that were back then. Because let's just plainly say it. I'm just going to say it, man. They're not like they used to be, man, back in the day. And, those old school type players, when you get back to it, and when you get back to like listening to the old school 80s guys, the studio musicians, the guys that are well schooled, that can read, such as yourself and stuff. I think that's awesome, man. I have a lot of respect for you, Tyler, and I wish you a lot of luck on this record. And I wish you a lot of luck when you do this, when you plan on getting this tour together. Just remember, marketing and image always works. It sells, man. You got to sell yourself. We always talk, man, you got to be the guy with the clown nose, the clown shoes, and just doing the dance for everybody, right? Am I right or am I right? Right?
I'm just gonna be myself and see which direction it goes.
Because that's rock and roll, man, as the Stones would say, right?
Right.
I want you to do one more before we get out of here. You're listening to Tyler Alloy. And Colossi is the album, and this is his latest release. And I'll probably say it wrong, like later on in the days to come and stuff, because my memory span is probably about 5 seconds. Someone can literally give me their name and I'll forget it, and as you could tell, right? But let's do one more. And what do you got lined up here for me?
It's a song that I put out on an EP about 2-3 years ago called "The North in Our Time."
Mm-hmm. Any kind of inspiration on that?
Yeah, it was about a trip that Jesse and I took to Ireland.
Ireland?
Yeah, we got a rental car and we just drove all over the island. We just drove everywhere. It was a great time.
How was the beer? It was warm, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was cold
warm
and warm.
And thick.
Yeah, it was definitely thick.
Yeah.
But the music there and the atmosphere, and it, wrote a song about it when we.
Well, you are Irish. I know that.
I'm Scottish. Jesse's
Scottish.
More Irish.
She's more Irish. I apologize.
No, not at all.
And maybe later on in the next album, I want to see bagpipes.
Yeah,
played.
The bagpipes. I've got a bad moose valve on the pipes, so I'll get them. I just got to do some work on it after.
And if I could say anything, and I know my buddy Bruce will laugh when I say this, it's a little movie quote is, we got a piper down. We have a piper down. It's off So I Married an Axe Murderer. Anyway, Tyler Alloy here in the studio at the Hollywood show, and I'm glad to have him here. And he's playing his song here. Give it to me one more time before you hit it, and then we'll close the show out. Right on?
The North in Our Time. Far away, now the landslide. For lives and times it's sung, lives and times by. Hello, fire. Hello, hello, fire. Hello, fire. Hello, hello, hey, Green hills roll by, smoking green now. She blisters from the front, north in our time. Hello, fire. Hello, hello, fire. Hello, fire. Hello, hello, hey. Black stairs that fall in right, best they can find. Pulled teeth before it's done, north and our time. fire. Hello, hello, fire. Hello, fire. Hello, hello, hey,
All right, you heard Tyler Aloy there for you guys. This is on the Hollywood Show, and I'd like to thank him for coming in. I'm going to try to kill that mic right there. Let's see. There we go. And Tyler, thanks again for coming in and sharing your music with us. And the folks out there, I got about 12 listeners, so they all listened right on. What I do know is the wife had heard, and I know she probably teared up when she was over there because she's on a trip right now doing her thing, but she's able to listen to the show, which is cool because you guys can always download the TuneIn app and listen to the show on the internet at any point. And always try to listen to my show. You know what I'm saying? So you're listening to the Hollywood Show here with your boy Hollywood, Tyler Aloy in the studio with the album Colossi. And say bye to everybody, Tyler, if you don't mind.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for listening and all the support. Thank you so much.
Right on. Thanks, Tyler. And good luck to you for everything that you do. All right, brother?